presentation, I just want to say thank you to Leslie and George for putting on this event. For all the vendors that are being here, if you can hear me in the back, give yourselves a warm round of applause. Thank you everybody for being here. Let's hear it, guys. This kind of event is very important. It's local, it's based on community values, and we've got all kinds of great speakers speaking today. It's an honor for me to be here today speaking to you guys and to be a part of this. I also want to point your way to our table. My partner here, Chris Rusak, representing Modern Knowledge. His lovely wife, Nancy, is here as well. And, oh look, my lovely wife just showed up as well. Hello, ladies. Welcome. Beautiful people. Come on in. Awesome. All right, guys, so those who are not familiar with what I do, basically just a regular average person that went on a journey of seeking understanding about, my own personal journey of why I'm here and what my destiny might be here on this planet. And along that journey, I started also looking into what's going on in the world. And in the background, I had always been studying martial arts, philosophy of martial arts. I grew up reading books on the various martial arts traditions. That's actually how I started it before I even got into the physical aspects of it. And now I run a martial arts facility with my beautiful wife, Monica. It's located in Vaughan. It's called Warrior Arts Academy. And there we teach all ages, kids, adults. We do fitness training, nutritional training, and counseling, and also bringing back this warrior tradition, a philosophy that I feel desperately needs to come back in our time. We're going to go through some points as to what that's all about. I do host a show on truefrequencyradio.com. It airs live Monday nights, 10 p.m. to 12. A little bit late, but the archives are available, so you can go and check out any past shows that you might have missed. And of course, I'm also the co-founder, along with my partner Chris, of the Modern Knowledge Tour, which was a first-time venture where we wanted to try to bring this information to a wider audience in Canada. And we just finished a recent tour. It was our first one. And we had speakers join us from all over the world. Michael Tellinger, Richard Dolan, Michael Tessarian, Dr. Carmen Bolter, Samuels Monagish from the Bosnian Pyramid, Carrie Cassidy, on and on and on. We must have had a good 20 different people participating in that. They were either there live, we had Linda Moulton Howe come to Toronto, fantastic. And we just, honestly, my mind was blown just as much as I'm sure everybody sitting in the audience. And from that, it has turned into something even greater, in my opinion, because more people are wanting to get involved. It was great to see that in Canada, there's a lot of good, strong people that are active in their communities, doing great work. And so to see that happen and to go to every province, we went to 12 major Canadian cities. Took us about a month's time to do, driving in an RV, and it was great experience. And more events are on the way. So check out our table. We're just located in the back over there. We've got some exciting events coming up. And we also have an online multimedia platform that is going to be available for you, so you can check out all the access to the events and the information that we've been presenting. So that's a little bit about me. I want to get through a lot of this. This presentation is originally probably about a good 2-hour presentation, so I'm going to condense it. So I apologize if I run through any of this quickly. If you ever have any questions popping into your head while I'm talking, take a mental note. Come talk to me right after. I'm going to be here probably till about 4 or 5, so I'd love to talk to you guys. Let's do some definitions here. I want to talk about this concept of what it means to be a warrior. What is this philosophy? What is this ancient wisdom that we're talking about? There's a lot of misconceptions about martial arts in general, and also the true philosophy and the principles of warriorship, okay, which is, it's a way of life. There are many definitions. If you go look it up in a dictionary, they're going to tell you a warrior means a brave or experienced soldier or fighter. All right, it's pretty bland. But if you actually go and you dig into the real works and the traditions from the masters that are the founders of these principles and these arts, and they've been carrying on this knowledge throughout the centuries, they have a totally different definition. I've given my definition in relation to the presentation I'm going to be giving today. And this is just based on my own research. This is going to be a little bit of a mixed bag of information, but it's all centered around this philosophy. And to me, a warrior is one who works to be free of all illusion and correctly perceives and aligns with that which is. So we're looking at shattering illusions. Illusions about how we perceive ourselves, illusions about how we perceive those around us, illusions about how we perceive what's taking place in the world and in the grander cosmos. We need to shatter those illusions. And it's very inherent in these different traditions. this idea of learning how to face the sort of the darker aspects of yourself. Some people call it the shadow self, right? Something very, the subconscious mind. There's always something going on in the background, and it's very important to address those things. We just had Dr. Michael here talking about the body, how to balance and recalibrate the body, and how to see the pain and the different things that are different signals that are communicating with you. There's a communication going on with your body, as is in your mind, and obviously in a spiritual sense as well. And when we apply that knowledge to what's taking place geopolitically, to what's taking place on the grand global stage with the collective consciousness of the human race, we can see that there are signs of pain and trauma and what we call negative things popping up all over the place. And those are signs that, in my opinion, need to be addressed. And it takes the mindset, someone that is imbued with the spirit of a warrior, to be able to look at that. Because it's important that we do, because when you look at it, you can fix it, right? And that's the whole point. There's an old Kung Fu maxim. It says, look beyond the surface, see what is real in yourself and others. So ignore these false paradigms. Get out of the creating and participating in an illusory way of seeing yourself. Look at the way our kids are being brought up today. We're going to get into some of that. You've got young girls not eating. They got all these epidemics of food disorders, eating disorders, because there's a constant bombardment by the media, by the so-called role models that they're looking up to in our society. And that's also permeating through the minds of those that influence them, that are saying, you're not good enough, you're too fat, you're too tall, you're too short, you're not cool enough, the way you speak is not eloquent enough. And so this mindset is parasitical, and it's destroying the way a lot of our, not just with the kids, but it goes all the way up to us as adults as well. And so we need to address these things. I'm going to give you the quotes directly from, in my opinion, one of the greatest and most prolific writers on the subject of warrior consciousness, Morihei Ueshiba Sensei. He was the founder of the art of Aikido. Aikido is really talking about energy, moving energy, understanding the ebb and the flow of the universe. And he says this about the warrior. A true warrior is invincible because he or she contests with nothing. True defeat means to defeat the mind of contention that we harbor within. Budo, which is the path of the warrior, is not a means of felling an opponent by force or by lethal weapons. Neither is it intended to lead the world to destruction by arms and other illegitimate means. True Budo calls for the bringing of the inner energy of the universe in order, protecting the peace of the world, as well as preserving everything in nature in its right form. So what he's giving you there is a couple ingredients to a big list of things that we are responsible for doing on this planet. You didn't just come here, in my opinion, and in the opinion of this philosophy, to just be a cog in a wheel. You're not just here to get a job and work that job until you can't work anymore, experiencing all these stresses and anxieties, and then hopefully maybe you can have a pension and retire, and then what? That's it. There's more to life than that. You are here for more than that. It's the society that we have allowed to spring up around us that influences us to think that that's all it's about. It's just about getting money. Material success is only what success means. We live in a field of anxiety and fear-based energy that if you measured it, and people have measured it, it's going to blow your mind, the type of environment we live in. And that's not even talking about the things that we actually have control over, like our food, air, water, and our environment. There's a lot of environmental things that are influencing our consciousness and our energy field. So this is key. I'll go to Don Juan Matus. He was a shaman, Toltec, coming from the Toltec wisdom, and it was Carlos Castaneda. I'm sure some of you have heard of him. He was the one that was bringing forward that information. He was talking about the warrior, and it was interesting to me. And he said about the warrior that the self-confidence of the warrior is not the self-confidence of the average man. The average man seeks certainty in the eyes of the onlooker and calls that self-confidence. The warrior, however, seeks impeccability in his own eyes and calls that humbleness. The average man is hooked to his fellow men, while the warrior is hooked only to infinity. There's a big difference there when we're talking about personal empowerment. Now, from another one of the greats, I'm going to let you hear it yourself. I could have read the quote, but I'd rather you hear it from his own lips. Of course, talking about Bruce Lee. He's just giving his description on the real meaning of martial arts. So I'll let you watch this here.
Martial art has a very, very deep meaning as far as my life is concerned, because as an actor, as a martial artist, as a human being. All these I have learned from martial art. To me, at least the way that when I teach it, all type of knowledge ultimately means self-knowledge. So therefore, they're coming in and ask me to teach them not so much of how to defend themselves or how to do somebody in. Rather, they want to learn to express themselves through some movement, be it anger, be it determination, or whatsoever. Actually, you see, it's a combination of both. Here is the natural instinct, and here is control. You are to combine the two in harmony. Not if you have one to the extreme, you will be very unscientific. If you have another to the extreme, you become all of a sudden a mechanical man, no longer a human being. So it is a successful combination of both. So therefore, it is not only, therefore it's not pure naturalness or unnaturalness. The ideal is unnatural naturalness or natural unnaturalness.
So contemplate that. Not what we've been told by Hollywood and the proliferation of UFC and whatnot is as the only means of especially young people understanding what martial arts is really all about. This comes from Dr. Bodhi Sanders. I interviewed this gentleman, brilliant man. He wrote some great books. He's an award-winning author. He's also a Black Belt Hall of Famer. He's going to give you his quick definition of the warrior lifestyle, so you can see that it's applicable. Even if you don't want to go out and learn all these different physical arts, it's applicable to everybody. He says, the warrior lifestyle is multifaceted and entails much more than martial arts techniques. It's a complete way of life, not simply a term which encompasses anyone who practices some type of martial art. There is much more to being a true warrior than knowing how to fight. On the contrary, the warrior lifestyle is a complete way of life. It is a way of living a life of character, honor, integrity in every area of your life. It includes martial arts, but is not defined by martial arts. One of the definitions of the term warrior is a person engaged in some kind of struggle or conflict. The word warrior is not limited to someone who participates in an actual physical battle between two armies. Many people disagree with this statement, but it is true nonetheless. The true warrior is the man or woman who endeavors to live the warrior lifestyle and who lives his or her life by the code of a warrior. And they have no doubts about it. They are at war. Their struggle may not be against some opposing army, but rather is a struggle between the opposing forces of living in accordance to their principles of honor or living without honor. The true warrior, whether in the military or driving a garbage truck, must decide to live a life of honor and integrity according to the principles of warriorship. Talking about violence, the first thing I talk about with parents when they come into my martial arts facility is, oh, my kid's going to become violent because you're teaching them violence. But they forget that the word violence is also synonymous with the word violation. All right, so when you're thinking of a violent act of aggression, you're talking about somebody that is perpetrating a violation of your sovereignty or someone else's sovereignty. We have to be able to understand the laws of nature and the laws of morality, which we're also going to get into. And this comes from one of Japan's most hailed sword masters. He's regarded as the world's most renowned master of the Japanese sword. He's a Shihan, and it's Otake Usuke. He says, to be clear, the martial arts we practice today are highly efficient arts of killing others. But our tradition taught that martial arts were not for use in conflict, but rather for achieving peace during times of war. Martial artists must possess humility and selflessly serve others. This is what I consider to be the true Bushido. Bushido, devoid of the spirit of humanity, is nothing more than violence. So he's talking about this as being a solution to violence, a way of solving those problems. Both the internal violence that we perpetrate on ourselves with this conflicting noise that goes on in the back of our own minds because we're not addressing those deeply seated psychic emotions, right? And then also on the physical stage, which is where this all plays out, this can happen as well. So we need to understand the laws that are inherent here. This comes from Soke Masaki Hatsumi. He's one of the founding traditional leaders in the art of ninjutsu. Brilliant man. And he says, I'm not teaching you how to fight. I'm teaching you how to control evil. That's what we're really doing here. And he uses that word control, and you have to understand what a master of that caliber means by that. It's understanding, controlling those darker aspects or those instinctual responses that come from that knee-jerk reaction to something, you know, or understanding what evil is. I mean, I look at evil just from the spelling of the word, just to keep it simple. Evil is really just the word live spelled backwards. So when you see something that's working in opposition to the natural order or to life or to harmony, peace, prosperity, freedom, all of these things that we all value and that we say we want to have, well, if you're seeing the opposite of that taking place, then you're looking at that schism or that inversion, right? It's everything is inverted when you're thinking of that concept. Now, there are three tenets that are inherent in this philosophy that definitely apply today, and those are morality, understanding the basic law of morality, which is that to harm another is to harm oneself. Understanding the need for awareness. And I talk about it in my dojo, you need to be aware of your surroundings, so obviously you physically start, you know, backfisting one of your buddies in the face by accident if you're not paying attention, or you're falling backwards and you're hitting a wall. Awareness of your surroundings, but also awareness of your surroundings in terms of where you are living this life on this planet, what's happening around you. Also awareness, internal awareness of your own innate intelligence. The other third tenet is responsibility, of course, because when you have these two in harmony, you have great responsibility, and you understand that with great power comes great responsibility. Mark Twain, truth warrior extraordinaire in my opinion, he said it best: the weakness of all, or the weakest of all weak things, is a virtue that has not been tested in the fire. This is something that's really key, because here we are right now, in my opinion, living in some of the most tumultuous times we've seen. Things are building up, of course, in terms of all the different things we face as a species on this planet. You look at things ecologically, you look at things politically, socially, what's going on with the monetary system, the perpetuation of war. I mean, for crying out loud, it's 2014 and we're still, 75% of the planet is living in poverty. We're experiencing all kinds of violence and chaos that, I could stand here all day listing these things. These are the symptoms that we're talking about of the root causal factors. And so here we are, and I think this is a test. We talk about these, in the martial arts sense, doing these belt exams or trying to work your way up the ranks, and people get fixated on that. They want the degree, they want the gold star, they want the pat on the back, they want the recognition, but the true path is about climbing a mountain, isn't it? And this is where we are. We're being tested. I think of Earth as the school of hard knocks, and I look at the warrior philosophy as the education that we need to survive and properly express ourselves and learn the true aspects of what we need to focus on when we're looking at times such as these. Awareness. So we're talking about the difference here between knowledge and ignorance. Knowledge being everything that creates goodness, happiness, empowerment, peace, success, love, acceptance, justice, health, education. That's where knowledge is based out of. Ignorance, of course, you're going to get the opposite effect. Talking again about that inversion. You're going to have intolerance, prejudice, apathy, racism, fear, evil, failure, suffering, all those negative things that we don't want. So it's important to bridge the gap between knowledge and ignorance. Now this is, to me, one of the most empowering bits of information, and it kind of carries on from where Michael was talking about. This is an old Hermetic piece of wisdom. It comes out of the Gnostic tradition, which of course is linked to the ancient Egyptian mystery schools. And this goes back all the way through antiquity. It's the concept of as above, so below. As within, so without. As the universe, so the soul. So you can see here you've got galaxy spirals, star clusters, and when you take a look at the human iris, you see the same level of complexity and sacred geometry. Over here, you've got neutrons, protons, atoms, and then that's also reflected, up the fractal. As within, so without. Well, you got a brain cell, you've got the universe. You can see the correlations that are there. So we live in a fractal, and when you understand this principle, you understand that innate power that you actually really do have. You just need to recognize it. Right? So I find that very empowering. And it goes very well with this understanding in martial arts. Unifying the mind, the body, and the spirit. You can't have one out of balance. You need to have it symbiotic. And this symbol of the yin-yang is very prominent. It comes out of Taoism, Confucianism, and whatnot. But aside from any kind of religious paradigm, it goes back even further. and it's talking about polarities. It's talking about balance. And that's what you need to do. You need to balance out your body, your mind, and your spirit, which the spirit will be linked to your emotions. Your mind, of course, is your thoughts. Your body's related to your actions. This is how you act out what you're thinking and what you're feeling. So if your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions are all skewed and repressed and holding you back, well then your actions are going to produce, or your actions are going to reflect that. But if you're living in harmony, you're in that other bracket of knowledge, of the self and of the world, well then you're going to produce a more positive action in the world. And this is really where this philosophy comes into being. Of course, this is the Adam Kadmon figure put onto the yin yang there. I think that's very key. So when we're again analyzing where we're at right now, and I'm not going to spend too much time going on, the things the challenges that we're facing. I'm going to address it briefly, but we can't say we haven't been warned. And we've had many warnings from the past about the time we're living in right now. And I find this very key. I got this from Michael Tessarian, who's actually, I consider him one of my mentors. He's coming up to Canada for a tour next year. You can get some more information on that. But he brought this up, and it's really key because it's an ancient Gaelic Celtic prophecy. So I'll just read it for you quickly here. It says, "Then she, the priestess, added a prophecy, in which she foretold the approaching end of a divine age and the beginning of a new one, in which the summers will be flowerless, the cows milkless, and the women shameless, the men strengthless, in which there were trees without fruit and seas without fish, when old men would give false judgments, and legislators would make unjust laws, when warriors would betray one another, and men would be thieves, and there would be no more virtue in the world." Now I want to explain something about this prophecy and what I think about that. Even though we see those things happening, we see the death of the animal kingdom taking place on a massive scale, when they're talking about seas without fish. We see obviously the introduction of genetically modified organisms taking over our agriculture and our food supplies. So we're not eating, we don't have that access to that nutritious food that we used to have. We're looking at legislators making unjust laws. Well, that's an understatement. I mean, that's happening all over the place every day. And we see, I like they brought up this concept, warriors would be betraying one another. I mean, what are they talking about here? She's giving a diagnosis from ancient times on what could be happening, not because she has some crystal ball, but because just like a doctor, they can look at an issue that's going to turn into a bigger issue later down the road. Right? If you're watching a train go on a track, you know where it's going because you can see down in the distance. But if you're only looking at tunnel vision at the train, you think that it could go anywhere. But if you are able to zoom out and have that level of awareness, you can make these kinds of predictions because you know where things are headed, because certain conditions have manifest that are going to inevitably create future conditions that this is where we're living now. So I find that very key. And when we take a quick analysis of our modern society, and this gentleman said it perfectly, the test of the morality of a society is what it does for its children. It's the best way to get an idea of where we're at. So let's look at the mind, the body, and the spirit of our children. We're just going to go topically. This is very, very quick, okay? Look at the information that is being poured into our children's minds from all angles. It's absolutely, it blows my mind. It's repulsive. You've got the media, all of these so-called role models that these kids are now looking up to and wanting to aspire to be. This is cool, this is in, this is hip. If you're in school and you're not participating in this mindset, now you're the one that's being made fun of. Now you're the one that's being shunned. What kid in their right mind would want to be on their own, without any kind of support, any kind of friendship circle or whatnot? So there's an assault taking place from the media. The rise of extremely violent video games and other, media entertainment platforms that our children are they have ready access to it, and a lot of the parents don't even realize what their kids are being immersed in. They're not monitoring it. I don't know, maybe they still think it's the 1950s. I don't know. Things have evolved very quickly in this regard. Obviously, the marketers now have greater access to the minds of our kids, especially when it comes to advertising the type of food they should be eating. What kind of food is fun to eat? Well, of course, you go to fast food junk food type places. That's fun. That's exciting. They put billions just into appealing, not to the parents, but specifically to the children. It is very, in my opinion, it's nefarious, and it's creating the reaction of that, which is, of course, we see the rise in obesity, the rise in all these different childhood diseases that have never existed before, or that are magnified beyond our imagination, beyond what they've ever been. So it's a toxic environment for the mind, first and foremost. You take a look at the body. We live in the age of autism, right? Something that was practically unheard of before, and now it's getting to the point of 1 in 10 kids these days. And there's there's autism, and then there's a variety of different spectrum disorders that are associated with that. But it's clear that there's something wrong. Pediatric cancer. They're saying that every day 46 kids are diagnosed with cancer. Every day 7 children will die from cancer. Pediatric cancer kills more kids than cystic fibrosis, pediatric AIDS, and asthma combined. 1 in 330 children will develop cancer by the age of 20. Treatment and side effects can last a lifetime for these kids, but now we need to be aware of what the causal factors of this are. So it's serious, but my reaction is not, oh, that's too negative for me to look at. That's making me feel uneasy, so I'm going to ignore the pain, right? No, the pain and the reaction that you have is a natural reaction, and it's there for a reason. It's there to alert you. It's there to make you aware, and we need to be warriors for our kids in this day and age. Let's take a look at the spirit, the war against just taking place, in a spiritual sense, taking all the life force out of these kids, a rise in childhood depression, where they're being diagnosed and given all kinds of psychotropic drugs that are just totally making the problem even worse. They're not addressing the root causes, so therefore it's replete everywhere. You look at the way the media once again is influencing young girls and women to be raised to think of themselves only as a material object, but that's all that matters. You gotta look a certain way to get the guy you want, to show off for your friends, and that's all that matters. There's no understanding of their own innate value at all. It's not being taught. So as parents, I encourage all of us to get in with this and start educating our children, because we do need to change this dynamic. I have kids walking into my martial art dojo every single day that are in every type of psychological condition you can imagine. And I'm happy to report that we've helped so many kids with this, just by training them in this philosophy, understanding not just technical moves of how to compete and do a kick or a punch or a takedown, but to learn that this is an expression of empowering yourself, that you don't need to listen to those bullies at school. I mean, look at this epidemic of bullying. Well, why is that worse now? Has there been some factors that may have changed since even when we were young that is affecting the kids of today that we need to address? We can't expect them to do it. They're the future. We're the ones that are responsible for this. So I wanted to point those things out, and I also wanted to point out where we're at as a society, because while all of that's going on, this is us. We're busy doing our own things. We're being constantly put into this bubble where we're not conscious of what's happening around us. More and more of these gadgets that are coming out, influencing our minds, our bodies, and our spirits in a variety of different ways. And we're not paying attention as a result. And I'm not saying everybody here in this room, I'm just saying in general, when you look at it diagnostically, at our society now, this is where we're at. And this is the future. If you think this is bad, and I'm not against technology, by the way, obviously this is about awareness. You've got, the next thing is Google Glasses, where these things are embedded right into your glasses. So now you're not even going to be looking at me when you're talking, you're going to be Googling something else on the side and taking a picture of me and throwing it up on your Facebook page, and it's all going to happen at the same time. You've got people like Regina Dugan. She was one of the head DARPA contractors, and now she's been hired by Google, and she's advertising biostamps, microchips, ingestible nanotechnology that will literally be able to calibrate you. You will be Facebook, you will be YouTube, you will be living in this alternative reality. And there are fundamental implications for human freedom in regards to this. As cool and as sleek and as technologically advanced as this seems, and of course there are positive uses for this technology, but we do have to be aware of the fact that we're moving towards this at a rate that we can't even imagine, and yet spiritually, mentally, physically, we are going the other way. and now we're going to jump on board and start living in a virtual reality. So, things to be aware of. Is there a war on consciousness? Absolutely. And it takes a warrior to address these things. Look at this new Google Watch, Apple Watch. Like, look at this. It's taking things to the next level. And I would always advise anybody to think twice before allowing these types of technologies to just be implemented without consciousness about what they should be used for and whether or not you want your kids involved with these types of things. Okay? Like I said, I'm not here to just knock technology, but there's a proper use and a proper understanding for everything. Just finishing up a little bit on some of the problems we face. Obviously, like I said, there's still war taking place on the planet, and our tax dollars in this country and in a lot of the other Western countries are contributing to that. Whether we know it or not, whether we're conscious of it or not, that's a fact. And we need to be aware of where our money goes, what our so-called leaders are doing with that money, and what they're doing behind the scenes and who they work for. We have to be aware of that. There's a war on privacy, on water, resources, environment, freedom, consciousness itself, a war on the truth. We live in a world of disinformation as well as information, so you have to be able to differentiate between the two. A war on anything that's natural. Look at everybody here. They're all here talking about all these amazing ways that we can link back to that innate intelligence, connect to nature, and be healed. But there is a war taking place by these huge industries, agriculture, pharma, food, everything. There's a battle taking place for centralization of control of this. So it's up to us in this time to be made aware of it, not to be afraid of it, not to look at it through the lens of being afraid and living in fear of it and running from it, but to understand and embrace this philosophy that it's awareness and knowledge that can solve these problems, and they do need to be addressed. And as Krishnamurti put it, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. We look around us, if we're just adjusting to it because everybody else is, then we're creating that victim mentality ourselves, and then we're wondering why we're all discombobulated. This is one of my favorite quotes from, again, Michael Tsarian, because this is, again, understanding fractals. This is referencing the understanding of what's taking place within you and how you can take control of it again. He says this: let us never forget that this is a war on consciousness. The masses of men and women in the Western world compulsively avoid true, authentic, psychoanalytical investigation of their natures, particularly in regards to the so-called darker aspects of their personality, or the shadow self. However, not dealing with the psyche at all proves systematically hazardous. If we do not autonomously cleanse our psyches and strive to live morally, and we continue to violate the natural order because of our inner emotional and psychological toxicity, we will allow the ego to manifest surrogate channels to exercise its repressions and other negative debris. In short, if we give up the right rulership of the self, we inevitably breed Orwellian political and religious tyrants to take over the job and turn us into smiling depressives or worse. So essentially, I could sum it up by saying, if you don't control your own mind, someone else will. So this is about taking that power back, because you do have that power, and you're not here to live in this world and just allow it to run as it has. We can make changes, and the fact that you're here today, and the fact that George and Leslie and many others are doing events just like this, and what Chris and I are trying to do with modern knowledge, to enlighten people, not just to talk about all the bad stuff, but to balance, approach it in a system of balance, where we understand what the problems are, what the root causal factors of these problems are, and that way the solution will inevitably present itself. And I think it's the time for the return of the warrior. And I just want to show you a couple seconds here of Morihei Shiba demonstrating the principles of Aikido. Understanding that, again, evil, or the attacker, contains within it the seeds of its own destruction. Using their force, using their violence against them as a means of defending yourself, staying in balance, working harmoniously, and understanding the proper movement of the body, the movement of the mind. Morihei Shiba is famed for saying that your spirit is your force field. So martial arts becomes a practice in exercising that force field, in empowering yourself so that you can withstand any attack, whether physical, mental, or spiritual. elderly gentleman. He was probably about this tall. It was amazing what he could do. We often say that martial arts is a unique system of learning problem-solving skills, how to solve any complex problem, which is what I think it's really all about. So I'm going to move into the next section here. Hope that didn't get you down too much, but I just needed to bring those points to your awareness so that we can now learn about the solution, okay? So let's go into the ancient methods of cultivating awareness and empowerment. I'm going to start off with something really cool. This is something that I researched a long time ago within the art of ninjutsu. It's called the Kujikiri, or the 9 ninja hand seals. And this is just a methodology here of how you can work with different symbols using your hands, putting your hands in different positions. It's kind of like a yoga, but just using your hands. And the hands, of course, are the creative factor that we have to interact with this reality. So when you're using each symbol with it, has a corresponding mental projection. And when you have a correspondence there between the hand movement, the mind, and where what they would call your chi or your ki energy was placed, then you could bring about a change in your thought patterns. You could bring about anything you wanted. This is really about generating the law of attraction, is what it is. And each one means something. So I'll just quickly go through them. There's 9. I could get into the numerology of 9, but that would take forever. But we have, Rin, power, strength of mind and body and spirit, energy direction, harmony, oneness with the universe and the self, healing of self and others, intuition, combination of danger and feeling others' intent, awareness, feeling thoughts of others or perhaps your own hidden thoughts, dimension, control of time and space. Seems kind of interesting, but we can get into that more. Creation, understanding your creative nature, the fact that you are a creator. That's what you're here to do. That's why you are inspired by doing things like art and music, and you have a passion and you want to create and you want to be successful. That's your spirit force. And so you need to understand how to utilize that and conduct it properly. And then of course Zen is understanding the absolute, or the concept of enlightenment, which is just bringing everything into balance, equilibrium. And I could read through all this. I don't want to spend too much time, but basically the Kujikiri, or the Kyuji-in, is another term sometimes used to describe the energy focusing involved in performing the Kujikiri, because the Kuji-in are the 9 syllables or 9 mantras that correspond to the hand gestures, which are meant to evoke an energy change when performed. The Kuji-in is a meditative process that encourages the development of the body, mind, and spirit. It enhances the nervous system, endocrine system, energy channels of the body, mental abilities, comprehension, quickness of body and mind, and they open the door on a great spiritual level. I'll just skip ahead here. It's said to originate from Taoism and Hinduism and brought to Japan by Buddhist monks. The Kujikiri method is often misunderstood and misrepresented. In reality, these so-called ninja hand seals are practiced to focus the mental, spiritual, and physical energies of the practitioner to affect change only in the person doing the practice. So this isn't about any kind of voodoo or casting spells or channeling these big blue light balls that you shoot at an opponent in a fight. That's all Hollywood. There is a deep historical, spiritual tradition involved in this. And of course, there are many expressions. This is just one that a lot of people aren't aware of. The art of expressing yourself through kata. They call it kata. These are patterns. They've got them in karate. They've got them in taekwondo. They've got them in kung fu. All the martial art traditions have a series of movements that are designed to produce a more effective method of training. I put some points here about what they entail. Honest self-expression. How hard is that to do? To express yourself honestly. It's incredibly hard for a lot of people to do, but when you can connect with that power, man, the sky's the limit. Strength, alignment, power, speed, focus, rhythm, agility, and unification, which is the goal. So when you're looking at it, and you're thinking about the body and alignment and sacred geometry, a little thing about kata. Kata, or what the Chinese call Tao Lu, represents the universal pattern. It's an expression of the sacred geometry of the body. When aligned properly, When moving as one unified field, the movements can symbolize the ebb and the flow of the universe, the dynamic movement and the flow of all things, and is geometric and representative of any possible way in which we can move in combat and also in art form. The various patterns expressed contain both straight and curved lines, quarter, half, and full circles, including circles that touch and overlap each other. It also contains squares, diamonds, rectangles, triangles, crosses, crisscrosses, hearts, figure eights, and etc. When the universal pattern is repeated and meshed on intersecting planes that are in geometrical alignment with both the body and the elements, your universal pattern is complete. So this is beyond just some movements, and a lot of people don't understand kata, even in the martial art world, believe it or not. But this is just giving you some ideas of the alignment of the body, the alignment of the movement, the pattern. If you actually take a map and you draw out the pattern of somebody that has performed some of these katas, you will see intersecting points that align perfectly with the phi ratio, sacred geometry, etc. Because they're aligning moving in a sacred geometrical pattern with the sacred geometry of your own body, which is mind-blowing to say the least. So it could be considered like a yoga. And to give you a quick demonstration, I brought one of my favorite videos. This is Riko Usami. She's Japan's best. She's a world champion, and I find that she demonstrates these characteristics beautifully. So I'll take a few minutes and check this out. Beautiful presentation of strength, flexibility, fluidity, having a balance, like the posture. Pretty good, eh? So this is an ancient philosophy. There are drawings on cave walls from thousands of years ago of these kata patterns. You go out into the Asian continents and whatnot, it's breathtaking. So this goes way back. Symbolism in martial arts. Symbolism is a very interesting field to start researching, because you'll start to realize that the way that your brain responds to symbols that are everywhere is quite a phenomenon. It's very interesting. This is why we're so blown away by breathtaking pieces of art or architecture, or certain symbols seem to reach out and grab us. And there's a reason why ancient philosophical and spiritual traditions use particular symbols. And there's also a reason why some of the more darker aspects in the world today, so the dark occult, utilize various symbols as well, because they understand what the meanings are. It comes from Confucius. Signs and symbols rule the world, not words or laws, because there's an understanding that actually it's us that creates and co-creates this reality. So what's going in is going to be input back out. And if you understand what kind of power you have to either inspire somebody with symbols or to bring somebody down, you understand a very interesting dynamic. So of course the most famous one of the yin yang represents electricity, magnetism, masculine, feminine, up, down, all the polarities. I won't read through everything, it'll take forever. The Chinese zodiac, very interesting symbolism when you take a look at it. Understanding a lot of these various shapes and structures, the animals, why there's certain numerology encoded in these symbols, and what this really is referring to. One of the most famous martial arts symbols is the Japanese Mitsutomoi, which is this symbol of the three, the spiraling three. And when you go back and again, sacred geometry, the number three, popping up again, right? The three brains. The Trinity, 3 points to an equilateral triangle, on and on and on. You could see there is symbiosis there. And in a martial art tradition, there's meaning to these symbols. And I could do a whole thing just on that. I just wanted to maybe introduce that to you and inspire you maybe to look into this a little more, because it's a fascinating journey to discover, to say the least. Now this really blows my mind. In the art of Aikido, they have 3 symbols that they utilize, which is square, triangle, circle. And when you think about what each is supposed to represent, I'm just going to read them for you quickly. I'll match them up. You have explosive movements from the square. This is symbolizing that. Triangle music. Circular movement. Body, mind, spirit. Will, intellect, emotion. Justice, truth, virtue. Beauty, awareness, perfection. Solid, gas, liquid. Destiny, purpose, life. Past, present, future. Mirror, blade, jewel. Sun, stars, and moon. Rice, salt, and water. Digestive system, nervous system, circulatory system. So they didn't have all this fancy scientific mumbo-jumbo that we work with today. They utilized symbolism. And they used a very unique way of teaching this inherent knowledge and wisdom that we all have. And the representation of these Aikido principles by the geometrical shapes of triangle, circle, and square are taken from the Shinto cosmology theory of Gogyo-Gogen, where the elements of existence, liquid, solid, and gas, are all shown to be transmutable and interrelated. They correlate also with the sacred three, or Holy Trinity concept in many ancient philosophies, to the tripartite aspects of the brain, and to the unification of mind, body, and spirit. So, brilliant, brilliant work done by Yukitaka Yamamoto. And he's a 96th generation of Shinto high priest, and he wrote this about this. The principle of Sani Sangen explains the mystery of life. It means the 3 elements that constitute the basis of all forms of existence. These basic symbols both explain the meaning of life and guide the destiny of human life. We can see Sani Sangen operating on many levels. When you read some of this stuff from these guys, these ancient philosophers, and then you start listening to what the new modern physics and the language that they're using. I just had William Brown on my show last week, and he's working with Nassim Haramein at the Resonance Project. He's a scientist, a physicist, a geneticist. This guy's brilliant. He knows all the scientific arguments. He's argued in front of a panel of 42 of the top scientific board when they look at some of these new theories for his PhD. And they didn't argue a single point because there was nothing to argue. And essentially what he's proving is that a lot of this ancient wisdom is actually not just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. It's science. It's advanced science. Torsion and human consciousness. When I came onto this and understanding the movements that I've been practicing my whole life, trying to cultivate this idea of torsion. I didn't have that word torsion in my mind, but when I started getting into physics and looking at this, and realizing what you're doing expressed through the human body, through these various martial art forms, you're creating torsion. I'm just going to go really quickly through this. The first research generally credited with discovery of this fifth force, or torsion, was that done in the late 1800s by Russian professor N.P. Mishkin. Einstein's colleague, Dr. Ellie Carlin, first coined the term torsion in 1913 in reference to this force's twisting movement through the fabric of space-time. Award-winning physicist Nassim Haramein has, along with his colleague E.A. Roscher, reworked Einstein's field equations with the inclusion of torque and Coriolis effects. Pioneering Russian scientist Dr. N.A. Kortsev conclusively proved the existence of this energy, demonstrating that, like time, it flows in a sacred geometrical spiral. And this doctor, he discovered that human thoughts and feelings generate torsion waves. Such a discovery opens the door for a physical understanding of consciousness and a much more complete model of reality. Kortsev was able to measure physical effects that were caused by sudden psychological changes, including his own, proving that consciousness is related to vibrations within a fluid-like or etheric medium. In his ingenious experiments, he detected minute changes in systems that mimic psychokinesis, using an unknown form to hard-to-detect energy, time itself, he believed, which he pointed out united all existence in a unified field, connecting all things in real time. Changes in mechanical systems produce subtle alterations in the density of time, the etheric medium, as did gravity, thunderstorms, changes in season, and changes in matter density. Likewise, he found that consciousness also affected time density. Emotional thoughts produced larger effects on his equipment than did intellectual thoughts. So again, talking about reanimating that heart mind, the connection, the unity. You're creating this environment. You are co-creating this environment. So if we are living in a world where we're not operating in our full potential, and we're actually living in a suppressed state, a diseased state, what do you expect to see happening in the world? So a lot of people look at what's happening in the world, oh, it's hopeless, there's nothing we can do, what can one person do? But look at the one people throughout history, the many ones, I could name many, I've quoted many of them in this presentation, that have changed history. Just one person, just by changing their thoughts, their actions and emotions. You don't have to start a radio show or start a tour company or get on a stage with a mic. You can do that just by the way that you process information, process your mind, body, and spirit, by having more awareness of the subtle differences in your emotional body. So that's mind-blowing. And Walter Russell, one of the greats, he said that electric energy which motivates us is not within our bodies at all. It is part of a universal supply which flows to us from the universal source with an intensity set by our desires and our will. Willpower. If I could use one word to describe what you're training in martial art practice, whether psychologically or physically, it's building and tempering the will. And like Mark Twain said earlier, there is no virtue that comes into being of any merit that hasn't been tested by the fire. It has to be tested by the fire. It has to be molded and shaped like those katana swords, folded thousands of times in the fire, and they become the most beautiful works of art, the most effective tools. They're both flexible, they're sharp, and this is what you need to do with your mind, your body, and your spirit. Mushin, another amazing concept that comes out of specifically the Japanese systems, although it's expressed in other martial arts, they use different terms. Mushin is translated as no mind. I remember when my sensei first said that to me when I was a kid, and he'd go, you're trying to achieve a state of no mind. Well, his kids were like, I got no brain, he doesn't have a mind. I don't know, we just made fun of it because we didn't understand it. But when I started reading into it more, you realize that we're talking about an empty mind. It's a state of mind where the more logical processing center of the mind is not preoccupied by any thought or emotion. It is empty in the sense that it is unbiased, free, and adaptable. Mushin is the essence of Zen and a core principle of the Japanese martial arts. In Japan, there's an expression that goes, Mitsu no kokoro, or mind like water. Mushin is like that. It is like the moon reflected on still water without any ripples, and on its surface a perfect replica of the moon is reflected. And like in a mirror, however, when there are other factors like wind that creates ripples, the image of the moon becomes distorted too. In other words, Mushin is the state when what you observe and what you are become one. And it is this mindset that I'm constantly working on myself and training my students, because you're trying to do some complex movements, some complex technique, and suddenly it's your own brain that gets in the way. And I tell my guys, stop thinking. No mind. Get yourself out of your own problem. You are the cause and the solution to all your problems. That's the number one empowering message that comes from this philosophy. Is that if you want to learn about problem-solving skills, there's certain conditions that can be met to produce a more positive result. And this is a way of achieving that perfect harmonization, developing those 6 senses, as they say. And there's a variety of martial art practices. Unfortunately, a lot has been lost from the core principles today, especially in the West. We have no idea what we're doing with these things. We are grossly misinformed about a lot of these arts. So in doing a lot of the research, I found that there was some really good gems. There's things I also don't agree with. I'm not saying I'm completely, but when you really know how to weed through it and separate the wheat from the chaff, there's some brilliant mind explosions you're going to have, for sure. I want to get into natural law. I'm going to try to keep this going. I'm okay. Natural law. What is natural law? And we're talking natural law as opposed to the law of men, or the law of mankind, what we impose on natural law. This is from Jeffrey Anderson. He says, in nature, everything is connected, interwoven, and subject to natural law. We cannot separate ourselves from that, no matter how hard we try. In the martial art tradition, and I also took some stuff from, of course, again, the Hermetic principles and the 7 sacred teachings from the indigenous nations. And it's funny that they're all 7. Interesting. Code of morality, 7 corresponding with the 7 chakra or energy points in the body. Understanding, these are sort of the principles of what the ancients viewed the universe as. So you have the idea of mentalism, that all is mind, universe is mental. Correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without, etc. Vibration, nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. So keep your body moving, keep the chi flowing, right? Polarity, everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair as opposites, right? Gender, there's masculine, feminine. That's not just talking about physical gender, that's also, I have feminine elements as well as masculine elements. It's energetic. Rhythm, understanding the theory of rhythm, and understanding cause and effect. You can't just look at the world of effects and go, oh, well, let's just treat the effects, like what medical practitioners are doing today. You have to get to the cause. You got to get to the cause. So understanding what the causes are helps you understand why the effects are manifesting, and it gives you some deep insight into how you can change the realm of effects. 7 virtues of Bushido: integrity, respect, heroic courage, honor, compassion, honesty and sincerity, duty and loyalty. Do we live in a world surrounded by these principles? There are people that exemplify these principles. Everybody's capable of connecting to this, but when we see the opposite of these virtues being displayed, then there's a sign that there's a problem. The 7 sacred teachings in the native tradition: love, honesty, respect, truth, courage, wisdom, humility. It's universal. Some good books on this. Moral Virtues, written by Charles Hackney. He's a PhD. He did a great job on understanding what the virtuous, the wisdom from martial arts represented. And one of my favorites of all time, Zen in the Martial Arts by Joe Hines. It's a classic. It's like this thin. You could read it in like 2 hours max. And it just brings some brilliant wisdom as to what these martial arts can bring forward to you, whether you practice them or not. I'm going to have to skip through this, but this is just a brilliant instructional manual from the Lakota tribes about everything I've just discussed, about the power of the universe, understanding that you create your reality. What you ask for is what you get. And not everything you ask for comes from you going outside, looking at the stars and going, hey, I want a new Porsche on my driveway tomorrow morning. It's not like that. Most of what you're asking for is from the subconscious, running around in the background all the time, putting out signals constantly. That stress and that anxiety and that emotional turmoil that you're feeling, do you realize that you're communicating with the universe when you do that? And you're going to get exactly what you asked for. It's unbiased. It doesn't care. It's not sitting there going, oh, poor little David with his emotional traumatic issues that he doesn't want to deal with. Oh, I'll change it up this time around. It doesn't work like that. It's universal, and it's always in effect. And this is from Mark Passio. Again, I recently had him on my show. His website is whatonearthishappening.com. Brilliant guy. He does a great lecture on YouTube. It's 7 hours long, so take your time. Small bites. and it's about natural law. And he brings up a very key point about the proportionality of freedom and morality. So he says this: as morality increases in a society, freedom increases. As morality declines, freedom declines. Another way of stating this law would be to say that the presence of truth and morality in the lives of the people living in any given society is inversely proportional to the presence of tyranny and slavery in that society. So when you see tyranny and slavery on a rise, you need to understand that there is a violation taking place of natural law, and it can very easily be corrected. A couple quotes from some great ones on some of the problem. All that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. If we're going through this process of empowering ourselves, let's say, somebody here is educating someone about proper nutrition or some supplements that are really going to help them, but they didn't come to this event, and they stayed at home and they kept all that knowledge to themselves, and they didn't share it with their fellows around them, then they're keeping it to themselves. And that is symbolized here by this statement that, we need, if you know something, you have to do something with that knowledge. To know and not to do is not to know, right? That's what that's saying. George Bernard Shaw: 2% of the people think, 3% of the people think they think, and 95% of the people of the world would rather die than think. Unfortunately, this is the case. And Howard Zinn, great geopolitical writer: civil disobedience is not our problem. Our problem is civil obedience. Our problem is that people all over the world have obeyed the dictates of leaders, and millions have been killed because of this obedience. Our problem is that people are obedient all over the world in the face of poverty and starvation and stupidity and war and cruelty. Our problem is that the people are obedient while the jails are full of petty thieves and the grand thieves are running the country. That's our problem, right? So it's time for the warrior to reemerge. And when we talk about truth warrior, what is that? That concept of truth. Everybody's got this mystical idea of universal truth and who's God, what is all this? That's important to contemplate, but truth is very simple. I like the last one the best. I mean, you go through the quality of things that are true, quality of state of being true, a statement or idea that is true, accepted as true, that which is. Simple as that. It's very simple. It's that which is versus that which is not, right? So connect with that which is. Jordan Maxwell. I also interviewed this man. Unfortunately, his life, he spent a good 50 years of his life trying to enlighten humanity as to the nature of some of the problems that we face. He's basically a doctor taking a diagnosis of society and saying, hey, here are some of the things beneath the surface that you haven't been told about. And his life has been completely destroyed recently. He's still living, of course, but he's had incredible amounts of attacks, and it's gotten to a point where all of his work has been, he had his storage shed burned down, his house broken into, he's homeless, it's a mess. So I have a great deal of respect for this man, and he warned us. He said this: the more you begin to investigate what we think we understand, where we came from, what we think we're doing, the more you begin to see that we've been lied to. The more you begin to educate yourself, the more you understand where things come from, the more obvious things become, and you begin to see lies everywhere. You have to know the truth and seek the truth, and the truth will set you free. And unless and until you're prepared to look at the whole truth, and wherever it may go, wherever it may lead to, if you want to look the other way, and if you want to play favorites, and somewhere along the line you're going to find out you're messing with divine justice. So he's again stating one of these natural laws. Thomas Paine, one of the founding fathers of America, that doesn't get mentioned too much. I wonder why that would be. He says this: freedom itself had been hunted around the globe. Reason was considered as rebellion, and the slavery of fear had made men afraid to think. But such is the irresistible nature of truth, that all it asks and all it wants is the liberty of a parent. So just let it be. I mean, we're talking with Dr. Michael again about the fact that we're just treating these symptoms of the problem, but there are ways that you can go in and correct the system so that the system itself, the body itself, returns to its natural state, which is health. Your natural state is happiness and abundance and health and confidence and sovereignty. That's what you are. You're an expression, as we saw before, of the as above, so below. So why the hell are we living like slaves? Why the hell are we living disempowered, afraid of our own shadow, afraid of what other people think? Why are our kids being raised in that environment? It's because of this. Just allow it to appear. Let the truth do what it's naturally there to do. It's not going to turn the volume up for you to hear it. You have to turn your your noise down in order to correctly align with it. This is how it works. And Morihei Shiba, man, I can read the whole book this guy wrote because every word in it is just mind-blowing. He says about the art of peace, once again. It's funny, he calls it the art of peace. He doesn't call martial arts the art of war. He says the art of peace is medicine for a sick world. There is evil and disorder in the world because people have forgotten that all things emanate from one source. Return to that source and leave behind all self-centered thoughts, petty desires, and ego-based anger. Those who are possessed by nothing possess everything. I don't think you could say it better. So I'm going to leave you with this. One of my favorite movies, especially this scene, Morpheus and Neo duking it out. But they're talking, of course, metaphorically about this war. Your infinite potential awaits you. This is the message of the warrior tradition. Don't think you are, know you are. Stop believing in yourself and start knowing yourself. It's funny, that word believing has that word lie written right in it. Stop believing and wondering and going, okay, I'm just going to go with this because I think that's it. You know, there's a testing phase, but start knowing, start connecting with that which is. And it starts by how you do that within your own being. How can you possibly analyze what is in the physical domain if you can't analyze that within your own mind, your own psyche? So this is the key. This is the warrior tradition at its core. And I'm going to check my time here. Oh, God, perfect time. 2 minutes, 30 seconds. We're good? Okay, I got a few more minutes because I have a video to show you, all right? And I just want to thank you for hearing me out, guys. I just want to say that I'm not the authority on any of this. I'm just a passionate person that did this research. I've done this research my whole life. I integrate it into my daily routine because I think that this is one of the most exciting and epic journeys you can possibly participate on. Living in ignorance is also not living at all. So exploring the mysteries of your being, exploring the mysteries of the universe, the mysteries of what's taking place on this planet. This planet has some incredible mysteries to share. And you gotta head over to our desk and get Chris to do his little presentation for you on the grid lines of the Earth and the energy of the Earth and how they've actually measured this and some really interesting phenomena that's taking place. This gets into some of the paranormal things that we talk about. Paranormal, well, probably a lot more normal than we'd like to admit. So there's a lot of mysteries to be discovered, but you have to go on a journey. I can't do it for you. You can just open the door, and you have to do it yourself. So with that, I'm going to leave you with a little video we put together about the Modern Knowledge Tour 2014. We've got more events coming up. This is just a little summation of our trip. I hope you enjoy it, and I want to thank you very much.
I don't care about you. See that sunset?
This is what I see. You have a whole population of people who are hungry, and they don't even realize it's hungry. They're hungry for truth because they know there is something desperately wrong with the reality that is being thrown at them 24/7. It's a propaganda barrage. And when they find other people who are passionate about truth, who are working toward it and are going along that journey, they can see it. They want that. They want that, and they want to learn more. And what we have seen through this whole tour is all of these light bulbs going on over people's heads. And I really do think, I'm sure, one day we'll all look back on this experience and we're going to see this was an ignition moment where something special has really begun. And it's a magical thing, quite honestly. And, it's one of these things you don't notice until probably many years later.
So what if I were to say, okay, the Matt Allen and the Ancient Order, what is the message that you're trying to convey to people?
It's simple. Truth, liberty, freedom. I mean,
not being afraid to start a conversation that matters, right? That's it. It's really simple.
Does this represent the 4 cardinal points and also the cross, the solstice, the equinox? Like,
Yeah,
this
is the medicine wheel, like
the medicine wheel. This is
the Mayan cross,
and it was there before.
and the circle of life.
Before contact.
The circle.
Before contact, it was there.
Oh yeah.
The circle is everything, though.
Yeah.
What's really
circles-
cool, you know the Mayan cross, right? It sits alone.
Yeah.
South America, it sits alone, right? Up here, it doesn't sit alone. There's the circle that goes around it,
Right.
right?
The circle.
So when I went to South America, I made huge connection. Like I was like, oh, it's one, it's together, it's meant to be together.
This is something that is a unified language from the deep, deep, deep ancient past.
I'm going to try and connect some of the dots to figure out why things are so screwed up in our lives today. By the way, is anyone here that is happy with what is going on in the world, that think it's just, anyone here that thinks that what's going on in the world is just wonderful, it's perfect, this is the way things should be? Is anyone that feels that here? If you are, please leave now. Just kidding, no, stay, please. Especially if you think that everything's okay, you need to stay. Because hopefully by the end of this you'll realize that things are not okay, but there is a very simple solution for the not okayness that we can actually introduce to this world. So, I believe that if we don't know who we are and where we come from, how can we possibly know where we are going? And this is why I like to connect the dots. The great human puzzle, as I've been calling it for a long time. Most of us have asked ourselves these questions. Who are we? Where do we come from? Why are we here?
The new generation is vulnerable. So the work of people like myself is to make sure that never happens, and we do what we can through YouTube and through videos and through conferences like this to make sure that the new generation especially is reminded of these giants upon whose shoulders we stand. Let that never be forgotten.
It's quite the task, and I just want to introduce myself, say thank you to all of you for coming here today. If you're here today, your support means a lot, because we want to try to kickstart a conversation in this country about these issues that matter, that affect us all, and that frankly aren't really being reported to us by the mainstream media or by any of the official sources. So I salute your bravery. and thank you for your support. So that's awesome. Thank you. Yes.
Something that when you contemplate the Modern Knowledge Tour 2014 in Canada, going across from the east to the west, taking 3 weeks in their 1960s sort of roving van with Dolan and Tellinger and everybody living together inside. And that it is beginning to pick up energy and people